Okay, people, this is a bad quality video on a dodgy tripod, and as you can see, hopefully you can see what's going on the screen, but I thought I'd do a video to tell you how much Mamehooker really sucks, because people are asking for guides on Mamehooker. And truth is, if there was a guide, you would have found it by now. As someone who is trying to get Mamehooker to work with the new RS3 Retroshooter Reaper guns, it's been quite an experience. But let's have a look here at the latest version of Mamehooker. Mamehooker 5.1. Alright, let's just 5.1, latest version, March 31st, 2014. So this is what we're all using, guys. I don't really know what's happened and the extent to which Mamehooker support, maybe Mamehooker is done. Maybe 2014, that was it. There's nothing left to do. But for the rest of us, and you know, Sinden and Retroshooters and you know, what are they called? R41I, blah 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 blah. You know, everyone's kind of figuring it out for themselves. And of course, where things work, it's great, and where they don't, well, what are you going to do? You know, frankly, we're stuck with what we've got here. But it's a pretty important function, as a lot of people have noticed, that you've spent all this money on these guns and you want to get the most out of them. And of course, if you can get them to hook into the game and run correctly, well, yeah, of course, it makes a massive difference to how the actual game feels. Okay, makes a huge difference. So, firstly, if you download Mamehooker, find a download. I'm not going to tell you where to get it, but you find a download, and I'm going to zoom things as much as I can. Find a download, and you know, you're going to let's just do view. Come on, extra large icons. You basically care about this guy, right? That's your Mamehooker executable. And you also care about your own I files. In your own I files, there's a MAME directory. Do I understand the difference between putting own I files in the MAME directory or not? No, because even if you're running games that aren't MAME games, Mamehooker will still use them. So for instance, okay, I'm going to change again to extra large icons. You know, Too Spicy is a Technoparrot game. I'm not running this in MAME, but when I run Technoparrot, Mamehooker picks it up. Okay? Now let's have a look at one of these and try and figure out what the hell is going on here. Now, I'm trying to hope you can see it, but I'm going to try and zoom in so that it makes a bit more sense. Let's just, yeah, all right. So, first thing, CMO6. That refers to COM port 6, which is where your gun should hopefully be picking itself up. And then over here, CMO7, is your second retro shooter, which should be on COM port 7. Now, if you go to Device Manager, hopefully, and here's where it gets a little bit tricky, you need to look under your ports, COM and LPT, and then you see these USB serial devices, COM 5, 6, and 7. Now I can't zoom these in, I don't think. Nope. So take my word for it. COM 5 will be your Retroshooter hub. COM 6 and COM 7 will be your guns 1 and 2. But if you're like me, these might turn up initially as 4 and 5. Now, if you right click and choose properties and go to port settings and advanced, here you can change the COM port number. So when you get all these Mamehooker RNI files and they're all set to COM 6 and COM 7, what are you going to do? You're going to edit each one of these files, or maybe find your devices, change the COM port to 6 and 7. It's just easier because everybody's settled on 6 and 7. So just sit with that. It'll make your life easier. Otherwise, you're going to have to edit every single file that you download. Now, the interesting thing here is to also notice driver, details, property, device description, hardware ID. Now, if you look at the hardware ID here, it's 5750. If you looked at any other guides about how to pick up the hardware ID, the PID of your guns, whether it's in MAME or Demule Shooter, if we have a look at, say, for instance, Demule Shooter, which is something you're going to need for Mamehooker, no matter what. So, for instance, if you've downloaded Demule Shooter and you run the Demule Shooter GUI, this is my player 1 configuration, and you can see here PID 5750. Now there's two of them. You notice this one is the PID for the joystick version of the gun, which you don't want. And you can tell because of all of the additional numbers here. MAME will do the same thing. It'll pick up another one and register as a joystick. What you want is this one, which only has 5 buttons, which is registered as mouse and keyboard. And that's where you PID 5750. You can see it right here, 5750. And then when you go to Device Manager, port COM 6, properties, hardware ID. Sorry, what are we doing? Port COM 6, properties, driver, sorry, details, hardware IDs, PID 5750. So that means you know COM 6 is that, and likewise in Demule Shooter, do the same thing here on details and go to hardware IDs 5751. Same thing in Demule Shooter, same thing in MAME. So you know you're matching these things up, which means that in your INIs, when you are doing CMO6, you know that that is your first gun. Now, board, parity, data, don't worry about all of that. Just keep it the same. And, you know, this stuff is registering basically the commands, and then later on down here, what we are seeing is how the game will respond. But in this case, this is really important. This is actually a Mamehooker command or output. So when we go to Mamehooker and we go here and we check outputs and we have enable outputs, Mamehooker is incredibly clever because it can hook into these games and do its own outputs. And here, P1 CMT recall, that's actually not a game output, that is Mamehooker talking in the game. Now, in this case, CMW6, that's basically, I'm not entirely sure, but 6 and 7 we're referring to our COM ports, and then Z5 is the Retroshooter command for the gun to recoil and have the recoil hit back. However, a lot of commands, if we look back on, I don't have it working on that gun, on that one, but I probably should have it set to something like this, which is either you have the same thing, CMT recall, CMW6, but with the pipe command here, which is to say nothing plus pipe plus recoil, which I think is necessary. A lot of people say you get a double tap trigger if you don't have this. Now I've been playing around with just having that or having the null. Still haven't figured out what the difference is, but sometimes that matters. And you literally have to load, unload, unload, and play around with these to see if it matters. All right. Now, when we're talking about the whole process with something like, say, Technoparrot, not MAME. This is not a MAME video. However, for something like Technoparrot, or even lots of other emulations, to get Mamehooker to work, there's several things you need to do. You need to run Mamehooker first and have it running. You then need to run Mamehooker and have Mamehooker set up and loaded for the ROM or the game that it's set to play. You then need to run the emulator that's going to run that game. And then you want it all to come together. And you wonder why this is confusing for people. Because it's ridiculously confusing and there aren't any real guides on this. So I'm going to show you how this actually works in real time. And hopefully you can see it on the video. So, firstly, we've got Mamehooker here, right? But that's one thing. We also have Mamehooker. And that's another thing. Then, okay, what are we going to play? What game do we want to play? Well, I've got a bunch of these running with Technoparrot. And so let's have a look at our Technoparrot directory. So, Technoparrot is hidden away here. All right. So now I'm using AutoHotkey. So I'm running these games. Let's start with Too Spicy, right? Have a look. So what I'm doing here, what we are doing It's firstly going, look, before we run anything, we got to run Mamehooker. So let's run it. Let's have a look. Oh, it's not running. Why? Because Mamehooker sucks and it likes to crash a lot. So let's look at Task Manager and here's Mamehooker here doing nothing because it's not in our taskbar and it's just having a sad. And Mamehooker does this all of the time. End task. Alrighty. Let's run Mamehooker again. And this time, we can see Mamehooker, and we can show. It loves to do this. You could show debug, doesn't do it. Show it again. Oh, here's the debug window. Okay. Now, if you're going to get really tricky, you'll look at the debug window when you're running games, and you have to put game into window mode, check debug. Everything has to be running at the same time, and hopefully you'll see something useful. However, if you just want stuff to work, you don't need to worry about it. But main thing, Mamehooker is running. Okay? Next thing. If we go back to my Technopack AHK files, right? This is just AutoHotkey. All it's doing is running commands. So let's pretend like I'm not. For instance, right here, what am I doing? I'm running Mamehooker. Now, when you download Mamehooker, you go to the wiki. There is a lot of information there because every time you run Mamehooker and then you want to hook it to Demule and you want to play a certain game, what you need to do is know precisely, and let's just see if I can zoom this in, what you're running and what you need to run it. So in this case, this is a Limburg game. Too Spicy is a Limburg game. And you will see this if you go to Mamehooker, README, here's their GitHub wiki. Alright. And this is where a lot of things start to make a little bit more sense. Because if you go here, and you look on the side here, and again, I'll try and zoom it in, you'll start to see that they have details for every game that it supports. Now, Mamehooker is not saying it supports Mamehooker. What it's saying is that it supports Mamehooker, which is two completely different things. But in a lot of cases, they overlap. So in this case, where are we? Where is Too Spicy? Spicy, spicy, spicy. Where are we? Nowhere. Oh, funny thing. Because truth is, it is there. But you might have to dig through it to find it, which is to say, if we look at Mamehooker executable, yep, and then there we go. So Too Spicy, in here you can find the ROM name is Too Spicy. So if we go back to our AutoHotkey script, you can see that the target is Limburg based upon the details that we picked up from the wiki for Mamehooker, and then the ROM is Too Spicy. Okay. Now, rather than run the AHK, what I'm going to do is just show you what happens. We've run our Mamehooker, but I'm not going to run the script. just going to run it as a command line. So we're going to go to that directory. I'm at that directory. Now I'm just going to run this command, Mamehooker target limburg rom to spicy. All right. I'm going to paste that in there, run it. What happens? Nothing, you would say. However, over in the bottom corner here, we have a Mamehooker process running, and you can see it running. Okay? So, we've got 2 of 3 things running. We have Mamehooker running, and Mamehooker, let's, in case I forgot, in the INI, does have a to spicy INI running. And we have Mamehooker running, and we run Mamehooker. Your Retroshooter gun will rumble. That'll give you an indication, and you'll notice that you have no recoil. Normally, when you just plug them in, you can press a button and they will recoil. Not now. It's hooked in to the Mamehooker. However, we are not hooked into the actual ROM yet. We're not actually playing any games yet. All we've done is loaded Mamehooker, got the Mamehooker hooked into Mamehooker and hooked into your gun. Give me a break. Alright, so next. Second thing on the HK is to actually load the game. So I'm going to again not use the HK. Just going to do it through the command line, because all of this can be done through the command line, and the only reason for the HK is to make things simple. Alright, so we're here, we're in the Technoparrot directory, and I'm going to then take this Technoparrot executable with the process profile for Too Spicy. So in theory, and if this doesn't work, I'm going to have to restart this whole video, so let's hope it works. Paste that in here. Technoparrot runs. You can see it hooking up. It's running. And when this game runs, you hear that hook and you see the lights show up. Now you know that your guns have actually hooked. So Mamehooker and Technoparrot plus Mamehooker are all actually working together. So you get those 2 hooks. You get a rumble with Demule, then you get a hook when your game loads, and at this point you're pretty confident that it's hooked in. What you don't know is whether your Mamehooker configs are actually working properly, and that's a whole other thing. But these are the 3 things that you need, at least with Technoparrot, but most other things, it might be Technoparrot or it might be something else. So even when running standalone games like Time Crisis 5, same deal. But it all comes back to the Mamehooker wiki. So, okay, this guy's running now. Now, the settings, controls, all done through Technoparrot. So let's see, where's my start button? Okay, there's my start button. This is configured in Technoparrot. It wasn't configured in Mamehooker. So it's important you understand that. Mamehooker is really taking care of the aiming, but basically just set everything up as you would. So I got my credits. Give me credits. Thank you very much. First, oh, what am I doing? Yes. Alright, so why does this matter? Why do we do all of this? What is the point? In this case, there's only so much I've got. However, when I shoot, currently this is giving me a double tap. It should give me a single tap because my config is not correct. However, if I run out of ammo, it stops. All right. Also, every time I get hit, I can feel a rumble on the gun. Now, it can also come down to other people who've got these lights to work, so every time your ammo goes down, it makes a big difference to how the game actually feels. See, reload, I'm no longer hooking anymore. Now it gets a lot better. This is a very basic demonstration, but some people have said, oh, we need a guide. This is not really a guide. This is just a walkthrough to how much of a pain in the ass this is from someone who had no idea about how to do any of this 2 days ago. So I hope this works for some people to get a feel or a vibe just to how messy this setup and process is, because if you want it to just work and just work for everything, then that's just not going to happen for you. You need to get in and get dirty and start mucking around. But I can tell you, once you do, and once you start playing some of your favorite games, getting this to work with these guns just the way it should, and really starting to play around and getting that vibe, turning off the crosshairs, making it so that it's really, really like the arcade experience. It's light and day. Like, trust me, it's why we bother with this stuff, because it really makes a difference. And I hope this was useful for somebody, and if not, well, it's just going to exist on the internet in perpetuity. Thank you. Bye.